Hello, welcome to the Motorsport Review. I am your host, Perry Brown, here to talk about all things Canadian Grand Prix 2025. And I'm delighted to be joined by Eddie, who's been on the show before. And Eddie has just enjoyed their first Grand Prix at the race, at the circuit. Eddie, welcome.
Hi, I'm very happy to be there again for a third time. Not a sprint race this time, but my first race at the track. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
I bet it's one thing to watch it on TV, but to actually live and be there at the racetrack and to see like the whole city transform and sort of welcome Formula One as well. It's just mind-boggling, like the logistics of it, and just being around the town when a car goes by, like with the Red Bull logo or Aston Martin logo on it, and you go, "Oh my god, that's an engineer." Might be a no one, but it's just something. It just takes over everything. So no, we'll get to that. But I think we've got to get straight into the talking point. We're going right to the end of the race. There's nowhere else we can start other than that crash. So I've said before, I'm pretty open about being a McLaren fan. I've got my views on it. I will be open and honest, but I think, Eddie, you kick us off because you're a Lando Norris. You like Lando Norris. You like Oscar Piastri. You're not a biggest fan of McLaren. So walk us through the incident. Talk us through it. What did you make of it when you saw it happening, starting from the hairpin?
Oh, it was... So me and my friend decided about like 10 laps before to start walking to get to one of the entrances to get to the podium. So we have the commentary in one ear, the stream there. We can barely see the track. And they're talking about the probabilities of having a safety car. And my friend just starts laughing and says, we've got what, 10 laps? There's no way we have a safety car. 5 minutes later, we hear literal screams and the stream is a little bit delayed. Watch the stream and we see the crash. And I'm like, there's no way. There is no way that this just happened right in front of our eyes. And it was admittedly surreal to see this, because it's one thing to see it on TV, right? You're like, oh no, he crashed. But to see it happen literally a few meters away from you, it was something surreal. And I think it brought a little bit of spice to this race that had been pretty calm, pretty low key throughout the whole race. And then the last few laps, absolute like plot twist and unexpected from Lando Norris with how good he's been performing in the past few races.
Yeah, definitely. He's been getting better, been back to himself, hasn't he? And he looked to have the measure of Oscar Piastri all of this weekend. And then qualifying came round and McLarens weren't as dominant as they have been. And suddenly Oscar Piastri puts in a lap that's good enough for third. But Lando Norris, I think Andrea said he pushed too hard. He put too much pressure on it. Whereas if he just drove an average lap, he might have been third or fourth and ahead of Oscar. So yeah, it was a bit unusual. I've not called into question. That sounds so negative. I have highlighted his racecraft before, and I mentioned the hairpin because I thought this started as a really audacious, bold move by Lando Norris to fling up the inside. Immediately, I went to, right, where's the nearest cushion? I need to hide behind something. This is not going to end well, because we've been waiting all season for this McLaren duel to happen. We got a glimpse of it at Imola, but it was unfair there. Different points of the race, different strategies. To see it suddenly flash up that Norris has gone up the inside, Piastri's cut back, they're down the straight, they're side by side, even side by side. Norris was moving across on Oscar. Oscar was moving back. I thought, they're going to crash. And Lando did the un-Lando thing, backed out earlier into the chicane and thought, I'll get a better run down the straight. And then I know you weren't watching in 2011. You were born in 2011, weren't you, though?
Yes, I was.
Good. But you've seen the 2011.
I have seen the video because it's been on every F1 page comparing this year and 2011.
I was right there. As soon as Lando Norris's front wing appeared to the left of Oscar Piastri, I thought, don't do this again. I mean, if I had a penny for every time that two McLarens have crashed down the start straight at Canada and the second one has gone on to retire from there, I'd have 2 pennies, which is not a lot, but it's just unusual that I've had to sit and watch it twice and thought, you absolute fools. But I mean, Lando took it on the chin. He said, "Look, that's my fault," and you got to commend him for that, to come straight out the car. But yeah, what did you think of Lando Norris's mentality about the crash, the sort of afters, if you will, and the way that the team addressed it? What did you think that was gonna happen, and what they'll be talking about?
I was honestly very impressed with the way that he immediately took accountability and accepted the criticism, accepted the penalty, accepted like the aftermath. And immediately we see it in the interviews right after. As soon as he spots Oscar, he comes and stops his interview, apologizes to him. So I think this is kind of a bit of fresh hair from like what we've seen in the past few races of like drivers not accepting penalties or blaming on the other driver. I think that it was good for Lando to take accountability and apologize immediately. And it was good for McLaren to kind of like back him up and saying, yes, it happened. It sucks. It happened. But we're not going to try to twist the narrative into thinking it was Oscar's fault or someone else's fault. No, it was all Lando. And that's okay. It happens while racing. And I think the way that it was handled was greatly handled. I think, yeah, it was nice to see that you have a driver that is able to take accountability. And I'm not the biggest Lando fan. Like, he's not my favorite driver, but I respect him very much. And I think that I couldn't help but feel bad because we know how much of a critic Lando is to himself. So we all knew that he would end up feeling very, very bad about it. But the fact that he still took accountability, talked about it, and the team backed him up for anything, I think that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say exactly that he's his harshest critic, that he didn't sit and mope and go, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. But he just took accountability, walked out of that debrief and just went, yeah, hands up, in front of the media. As you say, right publicly, right there as well, said to Oscar, that was my fault. And I'm really sorry, because the absolute worst scenario would obviously have been a double DNF if he'd taken Oscar out. I think then the team would have had to be a bit more strict and say, look, you've not just cost yourself today, he has cost the team, but, cost your teammate as well, who's trying to fight for his own title. So, yeah, they got the best of the worst scenario, if that makes any possible sense. I don't know. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. So, yeah, I think they'll walk away from this. They'll say, look, this is why papaya rules exist. This is why we got to do what we do. They'll learn from it and they'll go from there. You mentioned the penalty. Now, a lot of people didn't. It sort of flew under the radar. Obviously, there's something else we're going to get to in a second that was sort of taking the top headline. But he got a 5-second penalty, and I thought, of all the things, what is the point of that? I mean, he's out of the race. What did you think of that? What did you think of the 5-second penalty for Lando Norris?
We've talked a lot about, and it has been talked a lot about also on social media, about the inconsistency of the FIA in terms of penalty giving. And I think this is a very good example because he already has a DNF. What is this penalty for? It's just for good measure at this point. I think the proper way to have done it would have been, well, maybe a 5-second penalty to serve in the next race or a few points off the license, because he already DNF'd. He's already been punished in a way. Why at this point just don't give a penalty? We've seen drivers get a lot more penalties for a lot less. So this is everyone was so confused when they saw the result of the penalty, and we're like, 5 seconds for what? I mean, he's already not in the race. He's already not in the points. What's the?
He's just DNF'd 5 seconds later than he did. So I couldn't get my head around it. As you say, a 5-second penalty, I thought maybe that's just the loophole they've got to jump through in order to give him penalty points. But they didn't give him penalty points. So I'm like, so it really carried no weight at all. It was more of a like, look, if you did this next time and you carried on, you'd get this penalty. But I mean, a weekend that the FIA will want to forget, no doubt, because there's other things as well. There's many other things a hint of foreshadowing there. But I mean, let's get on to the other part of the race there. Let's move away from McLaren, and they'll bounce back, I'm sure. Let's get to the fight that was between Max Verstappen and the two Mercedes. Let's talk about the first bit, the bit that didn't get nasty and didn't end up in a lawyer's court in front of the stewards. This race, I said online, I said my prediction is George Russell gets the lead. Max Verstappen's got to protect his points. He knows he doesn't want to ban. Later in the race, that Red Bull is going to come good. And it just wasn't the case. The Mercedes was so good this weekend. You know, they've said cooler temperatures. You were there. You said it was hotter than expected. But they still managed to make it work. Probably cooler than where they used to. But that Mercedes was working well and looking after its tyres. Yeah, what did you make of that when you saw Antonelli catching and about to pass Verstappen?
I was genuinely impressed with the pace that the McLarens had this weekend. If this is something that I could have put like in a predictions box, I never would have expected it. The Mercedes to be on podium, easily be on podium, and easily lead the race the whole time. It was very impressive to see, especially Antonelli, who had, I would say, kind of a bit of a redemption race after the horrible triple header that he's had. It was beautiful to see, and I'm not the biggest Russell fan, but damn, that was beautiful to see that, and to see Antonelli win his first podium, Verstappen on it, and Russell also have like a brilliant race. Honestly, I have to admit, it was incredible to see. And the Mercedes really surprised us this weekend. Everyone, we were talking about it with some people. No one would have expected Mercedes to perform like that.
No, they said in the build up to qualifying, they said, well, the temperature's risen to whatever temperature the track was. They said it's probably pushed it out of Mercedes' window. So we're watching it go by Q1, Q2. They both got through. And then suddenly the laps by McLaren aren't good enough and Verstappen's on provisional pole. And then Crofty's getting excited. He's watching George Russell come to the line and he's going, what can George Russell do? And I'm like, you just told him. You just told us he's got no hope. And it pings across the line, pole position. I thought, you liar. You told us that wasn't going to happen. But it was phenomenal. It just thought, like, what, you know, you missed a Saturday once again. You pulled out the bag. And as I said, even then I thought, right, okay, he's on pole, very good, but they'll just do their usual trick of sliding back. And this is going to be Verstappen versus McLaren, as it always is. And then that pace was there. It was really good. And as you say, Kimi Antonelli, what an impressive race he had. That was phenomenal.
Seeing Kimi defend from Piastri the entire race, and the few times that Piastri almost passed him, and then him defending, it was brilliant driving from an 18-year-old who has to fill the seat of a Mercedes. He drove amazingly. He had a perfect weekend. Honestly, qualifying was good, and the race was just amazing to see. And I was like, oh, Piastri's going to pass him. Piastri's going to pass him. Never did. Just continued like standing his ground, and it was amazing.
Was very good. Yeah, he was, and both times that Verstappen pitted, he was just about to make the pass as well. Verstappen's not the easiest driver to overtake. He will do everything to stop an overtake happening. Whether he just, you know, he hasn't experienced racing wheel to wheel with Antonelli enough to know where the limit is going to be. You know, some drivers you can give a bit more, they'll be lenient, they'll move aside a bit more for you. Maybe he just didn't know, or maybe he just knew, like, this Mercedes is quicker than us today, and I need to just allow him through to save third place if that's what it's going to be. But no, it was brilliant from them. Less brilliant was the protest, and I've put it that way. I've worded it that way on purpose because, of course, as the race finishes and then the news comes out, Red Bull have protested the result based on erratic driving by George Russell, and I thought, here we go again. I didn't look into what it was, what the erratic driving was, because Red Bull love a protest, and I thought, slam dunk, it's absolutely fine. They haven't done anything. Red Bull are just trying it again. And then I watched it today, and I thought, actually, they've got a really good case. I don't know how Russell's got away with that. You've seen the same clip I have. We've spoken about this. I know that you agree with me, but again, talk us through your thinking. What do you think an appropriate penalty would be? Because I know that that's where you're gonna go down that route.
Well, I would maybe a few points off the license, because it's clear that Russell had intentions of like slowing down. It was not like unintentional, oh, I have to avoid something. No, he had space between the safety car and himself. Track was clear. It was 100. It seemed to be 100% intentional. So I feel like if I was the FIA, I would remove a few points from his license and maybe a few seconds penalty, because it's a bit hard to obviously make the decision for the FIA of what I would give him, but I would definitely
do it. You're on a podcast. That's the point of it. I want your opinion. You're in the position. I'm putting you in the position. You're on the FIA, Eddie. What's your decision?
Well, if it had been me, I would have probably given him like at least a 5-second penalty and a few points off the license, because this is not okay. This is not. And knowing the comments that Russell made all through the weekend, from like the beginning of the week, we've heard interviews of him talking about Verstappen only needing 1 point to have a race ban, and knowing that Verstappen somehow lives rent-free in Russell's head, and it's clear right now, I feel like Russell wanted to try anything to kind of like destabilize Max and have him banned for the next race. He had no obligation to do that. He was already winning. There was like 3 laps left under a safety car and for the race. You already have the win. You don't need to force anything else to win. You already have it. So knowing that you see that this is intentional, yeah, if I had been the FIA, I would have given him a few points off his license. Like, okay, you want to play with that? Here, have a few points off as well. We'll see who gets the race ban first. So I think
absolutely agree with that.
Have we had any news about have they reached a verdict or not?
Oh, what, on the protest?
Yeah.
Oh, it got thrown out. Yeah, they just went, no, it's
You're kidding.
It was about 5.5 hours after the race. And again, I heard the verdict before I saw the incident, because it was like 2 a.m. here when it got announced. You know, we finally got a race result. Excellent. Obviously, the font of all knowledge is Chris Medland. Like, nothing's true until Chris has said it. And so I woke up in the morning, saw the tweet that he said, right, 5.5 hours after the race, we've got a race result. No further action. It's been rejected. And then I saw it today and went, oh my God, how has he got away with that? Like, I am an ex-football referee. I play football. I love drawing a comparison to football. And this is a professional, a defender on a yellow card. You run into the box and then you do the full, like, up I go and throw it in the air and he's clipped my leg, and then you roll into roll G in the grandstand, giving it the full beans, the full I'm dead, I'm dying. It was that. It was full on showboating, trying to get Max a penalty. Like, he's braked, as you say. They've said, he's only hit 30G. He hasn't hit the brake that hard or something. And I thought, no, he's clearly done it for that reason. He was so lucky. I agree with you fully. I think that's 5-second penalty, if not more, and 2 points on his license.
Because let's face it, if reverse the roles, Max does the same thing to Russell, it would have been a penalty like that. No questioning. No, Max got an impeding penalty back. What was it, in Qatar? For less than that. For literally less than that, and they realized after that it probably shouldn't have been a penalty. We've seen drivers like Yuki get a penalty this weekend, a 10 grid drop penalty for less than that. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but you can't help but kind of like talk about the British bias there, because Lando gets nothing.
Slog off.
Lando gets nothing, and he caused a crash. Russell gets nothing, and he almost caused a crash. It's the FIA has to start being more consistent in their way of like giving the penalties, because this is not working anymore. And I feel like us, the fans, know it. We notice it, and it's very clear. The drivers know it as well. I think there's something that has to be done.
Yeah, there's calls, isn't there, for full-time stewards, and I think this whole argument, Ben Sullivan, I think, said last year, he's like, who's going to pay for that? And I'm like, I'll do it for free. Sign me up. Like, Ben, if you're listening, if you're one of my 12 listeners that I've got, Ben, I'm offering now. I will come to every race and I will steward for free. And I'll try and be as lenient as possible. Obviously, 0 points to McLaren every time. You know, they can't do any wrong. But apart from that, I will stand there and go, yep, George Russell should get a penalty. Yuki Tsunoda overtook Oscar Piastri when Oscar was limping back to the pit lane. But because there was a red flag, it 10 place grid drop. I mean, I know overtaking under red is harsh, but also you could argue you're not supposed, if you cause damage to your car, like, I don't know, Sergio Perez in Canada loves it last year, and you try and limp back and you drag a rear wing across the track, they're not very happy about that. We know that they're not happy about that. So should Oscar Piastri have got a penalty for driving under red flag conditions, limping a car back?
Exactly. The FIA is not consistent with I feel like there should be, with the arrival of new regulations next year, also new rules for consistent penalty, because has it always been a 10 place grid drop penalty for overtaking under red flag? Probably not. I would assume not. So I feel like this is something that has to be discussed. And also, I learned that it costs about 2,000 euros or something like that to contest a penalty. No, not contest. What is it? To like what Red Bull did.
To protest.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. To protest a penalty. Use that money to pay for permanent stewards. There you go.
There you go.
What are you doing with that money, FIA?
There you go, Ben. I know I said I'd do it for free, but I'll do it for $2,000. I'll do it for the $2,000 instead.
There you go.
I'm earning money now.
You have like 5-6 people always there. Give them $2,000 each race.
Easy money, and hopefully a bit of consistency, because yeah, it wasn't there. And I have praised the FIA this year. They were my highlight of the weekend. I can't remember where, but one of the early races, I said they got the decisions spot on, and they can do it once. And then you have a weekend like this where every single time something goes to the stewards, it's flip the coin in the air, roll the dice. Oh, it's a 1. Right. What's that? Oh, it's a 5-second penalty to Ocon. It wasn't even involving Ocon yet, but that's what them rules say. And you go, oh God, he's going. And of course, right, even before the weekend starts, they lose Derek Warwick. He gets suspended as well, and they have to bring in Enrico Bernaldi via video link as their steward instead. And you're thinking, again, where's the consist? I'm British. I'm aware we're talking Derek Warwick versus Johnny Herbert here, the two Brits. So I'm going to remove the nationality from this part of the debate. But you do go, well, hang on, Johnny was removed completely in one foul swoop. That's it. He's gone. And that was because of who he spoke to, whereas Derek Warwick was apparently for what he said. I tend to think that what you say is more important than who you say it to. You would have thought that they'd say to Derek, like, thanks, but no thanks. So 1 race suspension, he's back stewarding from Austria. So I don't know what you make of that. It was a bit headline news, but should it really matter who's in the steward's box anyway? As long as they're consistent, that should be what matters, right?
Yeah, and I kind of like did my research on it to see what he said to have him removed, and I didn't find anything too shocking. So I was a little bit confused. I was like, well, obviously as a steward, your job is to be as impartial as possible, but everyone has their opinion. And from what I've seen, what he said, I don't exactly remember what he said that got him banned, but it's not that bad. We've seen worse. Do you remember? I
shared something. So people found about 3 quotes, and one of them was about Yuki Tsunoda saying he's under pressure. I mean, that one's not it. That's not the one. He said maybe Lewis Hamilton is regretting the decision to join Ferrari. I don't think it's that one. I think he said along the lines of, if he had his 8th, he would have gone by now. I don't think it's that. I pointed towards a comment he made about the Verstappen-Russell incident, where he said that he didn't believe that the incident was worth talking about. He didn't think it was a penalty. And he said something along the lines of, he believed it was unintentional. And Max has come out and said it's intentional, but someone pointed out and said, maybe what he's saying is that he shouldn't have had to give the place back to George Russell, and therefore the whole situation was avoidable, was unintentional. The fact that he should have just driven off into the distance, George Russell forced him off track, and therefore they were in the right positions. But that's a Red Bull error, you know. If he's come out and said, well, that's the problem. I mean, he's not said anything wrong there. I don't think that's particularly bad. If that's the way he's intended to say it, like, he shouldn't have had to give the place back. To lose, to be suspended for a race seems harsh for that.
That's what I saw as well. So that I was like, this is not shocking. This is not. It's just an opinion, and an opinion that, well, makes sense compared to a few things we've seen from other stewards or even like commentators or even drivers. I think this is not something that should have been warranted a race ban for. No,
I've not been the nicest person to Derek Warwick either, you know, when you hear certain things. But again, to me, as long, you know, if he comes back to Austria and it's consistent and we get the right penalties or lack of penalties, then fine. I don't, you shouldn't matter. It's like, again, football. Someone goes, oh, it's Mark Clattenburg that's doing the game this weekend, and people go, oh, that means this. Like, he can turn up and have the best game of his life, and if I don't hear the name Mark Clattenburg, that's fine by me. You know, someone's past doesn't mean that they can go on and they're going to do the same thing. They might turn a corner, or the things that are said about them aren't true at all. So yeah, we'll see going forward whether what comes of that. But I mean, I put a slight mark against Benaldi, perhaps, you know, after this weekend. But I don't want to talk about FIA anymore. I don't want to talk about that. We had a race apparently that went on in Canada. So I think the final point to sort of pick up on the race, it was going to be a race that sort of got to the end, the last 10 laps or so, you know, as different strategies played out. And I've got a note here for Ocon and Sainz, who seem to be goal hanging. It's another football reference. Seem to be goal hanging. They waited as long as they could and then got the one stop, and it worked a treat for them. I like to highlight the midfield a bit more, of course. They won that battle, but oh my word, it was a bloody brutal battle in the midfield.
It was.
Every time it came up on screen, it was just like, there was Alpines, there was Hasses, there were Stakes, there'd be a Lance Stroll in the middle of it, and they'd be swapping and battling. It was brutal, but it was brilliant racing, and you sort of sat there going, it's a shame this is for 12.
No, it was entertaining to watch, and it seems like this season the midfield cars kind of like evened out, so you have very entertaining battles between like Isaac, who's in the Racing Bull, and you have like, I don't know, Ali in the Haas, and seeing them battle like that and overtakes after overtake, and you're like, oh, that's probably gonna cause a crash. Oh no. Oh, it was very entertaining to see. We saw like, it was kind of funny to see as well on track, because you would see like the Mercedes pass, the Red Bull pass, the other Mercedes, the two McLarens, a few seconds gap, and then you see like a bunch of cars pass by, and it was very entertaining to see. And it was as much as like the front battle was kind of toned down and we only had the crash as a little entertainment, the midfield battle is very impressive this season. And when I looked at like some of the predictions that I made at the beginning of the season, I never would have thought that some of the teams would score so many points like they're doing right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think I had Williams as doing well. It's like the 5th best team, and they have typically been there, but it's kind of on show that if they have slight off or a bad day, or they get held up by an Isaac Hajar in qualifying, then there's the room for other people to nip in and take those points. And yeah, on a really good day, and Racing Bulls are in this category as well, they're up there racing Ferraris and Mercedes for big points, as you say. They're taking some really good stabs at not being so much midfield, but joining that fight or dragging more cars, because that's what they need in the midfield, is more cars in the battle to make it even more bloodier and brutal and more of a battle royale. But no, it seemed like there was a big divide this weekend. Even Lewis Hamilton, having the damage to his car that was costing him around half a second a lap, was still clear of that fight. Perhaps they were costing themselves time as they were battling, but it was very clear there was a divide from Hamilton in the Ferrari back to them. But I wanted to, as I say, I wanted to note that it was a good strategy call from them to put them on the one stop, earned them some points. So well done to those teams for that. I'm gonna go to the bit at the end of the show, but if I've got time, I also want to ask about your experience and get a little bit of a taste of what it was like to be there. But I always ask these questions. I've got to get them in, and I'm hoping you don't pick the same answers as me. But Eddie, can you tell me, please, your driver of the weekend and highlight of the weekend, please?
Oh, well, obviously, you're probably going to know my answer, but it has to be Kimi. He had such a brilliant race, and the feeling of like seeing him, first of all, defend from like both McLarens and stand his ground, and just like kind of make it so that we didn't have a McLaren on podium for the first time since Vegas last season, and just seeing him so young and already performing and having his sort of redemption arc from the horrible triple header that it was amazing. I think he deserved that driver of the day. I think the last time he got driver of the day was a bit controversial. This time it was 100% deserved. And I think, seeing him on the podium, I was like, wow, I get to see this live. I get to see this guy who's a year and a half younger than me doing this with his life.
Ouch. Ouch. Why? All right. You take my driver of the day and then you driver of the weekend and then you do that to me. All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna stop you there and tell you my driver of the weekend since you just murdered me like that. My driver of the weekend, then, as I say, it was going to be Kimi Antonelli. I'm going to say George Russell. It had to be between the two of them, and I think that as good as Kimi was, he was still the second best Mercedes, and George controlled this race start to finish when I didn't think he would. He was unquestionably the best driver of the weekend, except for that one braking incident, which I as I say, I think he should have got a penalty for. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say at least he's trying different games, maybe like try and put a positive spirit. You got to play these games sometimes. So yeah, I still think, despite that one thing that we maybe don't like to see in F1, no, he had a very good weekend all round. So your highlight of the weekend?
Well, obviously the whole weekend was amazing, and seeing Montreal kind of like transform to like welcome Formula One over the week was amazing, and all the activities, all the festivities was amazing. But I have to talk about the excitement that I've seen on track for F1 Academy. That was very emotional to see from Friday to Sunday, the grandstands being sold out, being full. People so the paddock was accessible. The F1 Academy paddock was accessible to the public for the whole weekend. And to see people in the paddock visiting, meeting the drivers, being there, it was amazing to see this, because we've seen so many people talk about like the future of motorsport and women in motorsport and how are we going to get there? Are the public really interested in that? And to see this, to witness it firsthand, it tells me, yes, people actually want to see women in F1. People want to see these women succeed, and people are excited to see them succeed. I've never heard that many cheers when I saw Dorian on podium for the second race. It was very beautiful. It was emotional, and I think that was the highlight of the weekend, because I could see the grandstands filled up. It was 11 a.m. The race was not until 2 p.m. These people have paid for their seats, so they have a guaranteed seats, and they still decide to show up on a Sunday to see them race. It was beautiful.
That's a really good point. Yeah, they had free races there, free good brilliant races as well. If you just want to focus on the motorsport, but just the fact that they're there, and the best move of Formula Academy to put them on the Formula One calendar. I mean, this is a series that if it wasn't where it was, if it wasn't associated with Formula One, it'd be racing at, like, I'm going to Orton Park this weekend to see touring cars, and some of the Formula Academy drivers are likely to be there in the same cars that they raced at last weekend, supporting touring cars. So it's very different worlds, levels to where the series should be, to the platform that it gets and put in front of people like you, like all the other fans that are there at the track, to do their thing for that many people. And it's, you know, it's throughout the paddock, throughout the grid, you know, it's a wonderful series. I think they're going from strength to strength. Is it in season 4 now? 3 now, I think it is. Yeah. So I think it's going strength to strength. It's doing all the right things. And going to Canada, you know, again, it could have just stuck to the European races, but it didn't. It's in Canada. Brilliant. So that's a very good one. I haven't actually thought of a highlight of the weekend. I have, but I just don't want to say it was finally seeing the McLaren's race and them coming together, because I might lose my McLaren fandom. I think it was that. My friend's going to hate me. They're going to message me and say, I can't believe you said that. But it was that flashpoint, wasn't it? It was the big talking point. Finally seeing Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, wheel to wheel. Didn't quite work, but oh my God, it's got us all talking. And it's going to be the stepping point off for the championship from here. You know, whichever way it goes, this is going to be one of the key moments of the season. So it has to be that for me. Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, that is all that we have time for this week. But Eddie, thank you so much for joining me to talk about your Canadian Grand Prix. Like, not just the Canadian Grand Prix, but your Canadian. It belongs to you now. Your Canadian Grand Prix. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and for discussing it with me.
Thank you. Can I just, before we leave, pull a little like shameless plug here? I took pictures during the weekend, so if you want, if any of you, the listeners or viewers, want to see those pictures, it's all going to be on my Instagram account, which is eddie.jpeg08. So they're all going to be there if you want to go see them.
I will put the link as well. If people can either search for them, I'll put the link below as well, so people can just click straight into there and get straight to that account. And do go and check those pictures out, because you were right by the track. Brilliant shots, of course, that they were. So yeah, and they want to see more coming out, so you got to keep doing the brilliant shots as well. I gotta
keep putting them out, because I have so many pictures. It's crazy.
Keep the game strong. Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. And as I say, this is the Motorsport Review. Thank you very much for checking in, and wherever you hear from us next, goodbye.